The day I came home with our newborn, my husband was missing. His phone rang endlessly, and the voice on the line told me the truth I'll never forget. Hi, everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I never thought I'd tell this story. But sometimes the truth demands to be told, like breast milk that overfills painful to hold in, but necessary to release. That day began as what should have been the happiest of my life. March 15th, a Wednesday. I remember every detail because some days burn themselves into your memory forever, like a scar on skin. The doctor said we could go home. 5 days in the maternity ward had felt like both an eternity and a blink. My body was still tender, stitches pulling with every movement, but my heart was so full I thought it might burst. Emily. Our Emily was finally here. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect pink flesh with tiny fists that gripped my finger like she'd never let go. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times during pregnancy. David would pick us up in our old Honda, the back seat equipped with the infant car seat we'd practiced installing and reinstalling until he could do it blindfolded. He'd drive extra carefully, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds to make sure Emily was okay. We'd pull into our driveway, and he'd insist on carrying both the baby and my overnight bag, leaving me to walk slowly up our front steps, savoring the moment we became a family of 3. But when I called him that morning from the hospital room, his phone went straight to voicemail. David, it's me. The doctor says we can go home. Can you pick us up around 11? I can't wait for you to hold Emily properly. I mean, without all these wires and nurses watching. Call me back. I wasn't worried yet. David had been working extra shifts at the construction site, trying to bank as much money as possible before his paternity leave. He'd probably left his phone in the truck again, or the battery had died. He'd been so scattered lately, forgetting to charge it, missing my calls. I'd teased him about having baby brain worse than I did. By 10:30, I'd tried calling 4 more times. The nurses were asking about my ride home, and I started feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. The one that had been my companion through 8 months of pregnancy anxiety. Emily was sleeping in the plastic hospital bassinet, her little chest rising and falling with such peaceful rhythm that I almost envied her. I called his work. The foreman, Miguel, answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, Mrs. Patterson. David? No, he didn't come in today. Actually, he didn't come in yesterday either. Thought maybe the baby came early or something. The knot in my stomach tightened. He didn't call in sick? No, ma'am. We've been trying to reach him too. Left messages. I hung up and stared at Emily's sleeping face. Her eyelashes were so long they cast tiny shadows on her cheeks. David's eyelashes. I touched her soft hand, and she reflexively curled her fingers around mine. It's okay, baby girl, I whispered. Daddy's probably just busy. Maybe he's at home getting everything ready for us. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. What could he be getting ready that would take 2 days? The nursery had been finished for weeks. The fridge was stocked. I'd made freezer meals before going to the hospital. Neat little containers labeled with cooking instructions for David. I called my sister Rachel. Sarah? Oh my God, how are you? How's my niece? She's perfect, but... I took a breath. David's not answering his phone. I need a ride home from the hospital. What? Where is he? I don't know. He missed work yesterday and today. Silence on the other end. Rachel had never liked David much, though she'd tried to hide it for my sake. She thought he was immature, unreliable. During my pregnancy, she'd made comments about how he seemed unprepared for fatherhood, how he spent too much time at bars with his buddies, how he hadn't read a single parenting book while I devoured them. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said finally. The ride home was quiet except for Emily's occasional little sighs from her car seat. Rachel kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her jaw tight. I knew she was holding back a dozen "I told you so's." But I wasn't ready to hear them. There had to be an explanation. David loved me. He loved Emily. He'd cried when we saw her on the ultrasound for the first time, her tiny heartbeat filling the room like rapid butterfly wings. Our house looked exactly the same from the outside. The same beige siding that needed painting. The same crooked mailbox David kept meaning to fix. The same overgrown hedge that we'd argued about trimming. But as Rachel pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. David's truck wasn't there, but that wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the stack of newspapers piling up on the porch, yellowing in the late March sun. "I'll help you get settled," Rachel said, unbuckling Emily's car seat. "No, it's okay. David will be back soon, and you have to get back to work." She gave me a look that said everything she wasn't saying, but handed me the car seat anyway. "Call me if you need anything. I mean anything, Sarah." Inside, the house felt different. Not wrong exactly, but empty in a way that had nothing to do with David's absence. The air was stale, like windows that hadn't been opened in days. The kitchen sink was full of dishes, not just one or two, but several days' worth. Cereal bowls with dried milk rings, coffee mugs with rings stained inside, a frying pan with congealed grease. This wasn't like David. Messy, yes, but not neglectful. Not when he knew I was coming home with the baby. I set Emily's car seat on the kitchen table and looked around. The freezer meals I'd prepared were still there, untouched. The loaf of bread on the counter had grown a patch of green fuzz. The fruit bowl held apples that had gone soft and wrinkled. "Where are you, David?" I whispered to the empty kitchen. Emily stirred in her car seat, making those little newborn noises that sound like questions. I lifted her out and held her against my chest, breathing in her sweet, clean smell. Hospital soap and something essentially her. Something that made my body remember she'd grown inside me for 9 months. I tried David's phone again. Straight to voicemail. His voice, recorded months ago, cheerful and confident. "You've reached David Patterson. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." Beep. "David, I'm home with Emily. Where are you? Please call me. I'm worried." I walked through our house, Emily in my arms, looking for clues. Our bedroom looked lived in but not recent. The bed unmade in a way that suggested someone had slept there and left in a hurry. Not someone who'd been sleeping there regularly. David's dresser drawers were pulled out haphazardly, some clothes spilling over the edges. In the bathroom, his toothbrush was gone. So was his razor, his deodorant, his prescription allergy medication. My heart started beating faster. People don't take their toothbrush when they're just running errands. They don't take their prescription medication for a day trip. I sat on our bed, the same bed where Emily had been conceived on a lazy Sunday morning in June. David's hands gentle on my belly, even before there was anything to feel, and tried to think rationally. Maybe he'd gone to his brother's place. Mark lived 3 hours away, and David sometimes went there when he needed to clear his head. But for 3 days? Without telling me? When he knew I was about to come home with our newborn daughter? Emily was getting fussy, making those escalating cries that mean, "I'm hungry and I don't understand why you're not fixing this immediately." I went to the nursery we'd painted pale yellow because we'd wanted to be surprised about the sex. David had insisted on doing the painting himself, even though I'd offered to hire someone. "I want to do this for our baby," he'd said, and I'd watched him apply each careful stroke, his tongue poking out in concentration the way it did when he was focusing on something important. The nursery was perfect, unchanged. The crib with its mobile of tiny elephants, the changing table stocked with diapers and wipes, the rocking chair where I'd imagined nursing Emily while David read to us from the stack of children's books we'd already accumulated. Everything waiting for us to begin our life as a family. I settled into the rocking chair and lifted my shirt. Emily latched on immediately, her tiny fist kneading against my breast. This was what I'd dreamed of. This quiet moment. This connection. This proof that I could provide everything she needed. But instead of peace, I felt a growing dread that seemed to seep into my bones like winter cold. The phone rang. David's phone, not the house phone. It was lying on the kitchen counter where I'd left it after my last failed attempt to call him. The screen lit up. Unknown number? I ran to the kitchen. Emily still latched on, milk dripping from the corner of her mouth as she lost suction. I grabbed the phone just before it went to voicemail. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice, hesitant. Is this David's wife? My world tilted. Who is this? My name is Jennifer. Jennifer Walsh. I think we need to talk. About what? But even as I asked, I knew. Some part of me had known for months, maybe longer. The late nights that became later. The phone calls he took outside. The way he'd started showering immediately when he came home from work, even on days when he claimed he'd been doing paperwork, not manual labor. About David, Jennifer said, her voice thick with emotion. About us. About what he told you and what he told me. Emily had started crying again, sensing my tension through the milk, through my skin, through whatever invisible connection binds mothers and babies. I pressed her closer to me, one hand holding the phone, one hand supporting her tiny body. What did he tell you? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. He told me his marriage was over. He told me you were getting divorced after the baby came, that it was just a matter of paperwork. He told me he was going to leave as soon as the baby was born so it wouldn't be traumatic for you during pregnancy. The words hit me like physical blows. Each one landed somewhere specific: chest, stomach, throat, making it hard to breathe. Emily's crying grew louder, more insistent, but she seemed very far away suddenly, like she was on the other end of a long tunnel. That's not true, I whispered. I know that now, Jennifer said, and she was crying. I saw the pictures on his Facebook. You and him at the hospital. You looked so happy, and he was holding the baby, and I realized... God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you didn't know. Know what? But I did know. Of course I knew. He's been living with me for 3 months, she said. He moved in after Christmas. He said you knew that you were working out custody arrangements, that it was all amicable. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. 3 months. Christmas had been strange. David distracted, making excuses to leave the house, claiming he was Christmas shopping but coming home without bags, without receipts, without the excited energy of someone planning surprises. I'd attributed it to stress about the baby, about money, about becoming a father. Where is he now? I asked. He left yesterday morning. Said he had to go handle some things, tie up loose ends. He took his clothes and his tools and said he'd call me when he got settled somewhere new. Somewhere new. Not here. Not home with his wife and newborn daughter. Somewhere new. Emily's cries had escalated to the red-faced, inconsolable level that made my milk let down reflexively, soaking through my bra, my shirt, creating dark, wet circles that felt like badges of failure. I tried to offer her my breast again, but she was too upset now, her little fists batting at me like she was angry at the world for being confusing and loud and not the warm, muffled place she'd known for 9 months. I have to go, I told Jennifer. Wait, do you want my number? In case you need to? I don't know. In case you need to find him? Did I want to find him? Did I want to track down my husband who'd been living a double life? Who'd promised to be my partner in parenthood while planning his escape? Who'd looked me in the eye 3 days ago and said, I can't wait to bring you both home, while having already moved in with another woman? No, I said. I don't want your number. I hung up and stood in my kitchen, holding my screaming daughter, wearing a milk-stained shirt, surrounded by dirty dishes that proved my husband had already moved on from our life together. But here's what Jennifer didn't know. What David didn't know. What maybe I was only just discovering myself. I didn't need him. I bounced Emily gently, walking in slow circles around the kitchen, humming a lullaby my mother used to sing to me. Gradually, her cries subsided. She looked up at me with those unfocused newborn eyes that seemed to see everything and nothing, and I saw David in her face, the shape of her nose, the arch of her eyebrows. But I also saw myself. My stubborn chin, my wide mouth, my mother's hands already showing in the length of her fingers. "It's okay, baby girl," I whispered. "We're okay." And as I said it, I realized it was true. Not easy, not simple, but true. David had made his choice, and now I would make mine. I would choose us, Emily and me. I would choose to be enough. I cleaned the kitchen first, washing each dish with careful attention, as if the act of making our space clean and orderly could somehow impose order on the chaos of my life. Emily slept in her bouncy seat on the counter, lulled by the sound of running water and clinking plates. When I finished, I made myself a sandwich peanut butter and jelly, simple and comforting, and ate it standing at the window, looking out at our yard. The grass needed mowing. There were weeds growing through the cracks in the driveway. The mailbox really did need to be straightened. All things David had always promised to handle next weekend, or when I have time, or after the baby comes. Well, the baby was here now. I called Rachel back. "Sarah, how are you settling in? Is David home yet?" "David's not coming home," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Silence, then, "What do you mean?" "I mean, he's been living with another woman for 3 months, and he left town yesterday without telling me." "That son of a bitch." Rachel's voice was pure fury. "That absolute piece of shit. I'm coming over." "No," I said. "I mean, yes, eventually. But right now, I just need to. I need to figure some things out. Can you come over tomorrow? Help me make some calls?" "What kind of calls?" "Lawyers, banks, the mortgage company. I need to know where I stand financially, what my options are." "Sarah." Rachel's voice softened. "Are you sure you're okay? This is huge. This is—" "I know what it is," I said, looking down at Emily, who was making those little sleep sounds that reminded me of contented sighs. "But I'm not going to fall apart. I can't fall apart. She needs me to be strong. You don't have to be strong right now. You just had a baby. You're allowed to be angry and scared, and I am angry," I said. And as I said it, I felt the truth of it. Not the sharp, cutting anger I'd expected, but something deeper and more sustainable. Something that felt like fuel. I'm furious, but I'm also relieved. Relieved? I've been carrying this weight for months without even realizing it. The feeling that something was wrong, that David was pulling away, that I was somehow failing to keep him interested in our life together. Now I know it wasn't me. It wasn't anything I did or didn't do. It was his choice. Emily stirred, opening her eyes and looking directly at me. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for David's betrayal, but for the clarity it had given me, for the way it had stripped away all the pretense and uncertainty and left me with what mattered most. "I love you, baby girl," I whispered to her, "and I promise you, we're going to be just fine." That night, I didn't sleep much, not because I was crying or panicking or calling David's phone over and over. I'd turned it off and put it in a drawer, next to the wedding ring I'd taken off my finger. Not dramatically. Not with ceremony, but simply because it felt like a lie to keep wearing it. Instead, I sat in the rocking chair in Emily's room, nursing her when she woke up, watching her sleep, thinking about the future. Our future. I made lists in my head. Practical things like updating bank accounts and insurance policies. Emotional things like how to talk to Emily about her father when she was old enough to ask questions. I thought about Jennifer, too, and found that I didn't hate her. She was another woman David had lied to, another person caught in the web of his cowardice. In a strange way, she'd done me a favor by calling. She'd given me the truth on the day I needed it most. Not weeks or months later when I might have made decisions based on false assumptions about our marriage. As dawn light began filtering through the nursery curtains, Emily woke up for her morning feeding. I lifted her to my breast and felt that familiar rush of hormones that bonded us more tightly with each passing day. She was mine in a way that had nothing to do with David. She was mine because I had grown her inside my body, because I would feed her and protect her and teach her what it meant to be strong. "Your daddy is missing this," I told her softly. "He's missing the most important thing he'll ever have the chance to be part of. But that's his loss, not ours." By the time Rachel arrived the next morning with coffee and bagels and a fierce expression that suggested she was ready to hunt David down personally, I had a plan. I'd called in sick to work for the rest of the week. I'd made a list of lawyers specializing in family law. I'd started the process of disentangling my life from David's, thread by careful thread. "How are you so calm?" Rachel asked, settling Emily in her arms while I showered for the first time since coming home from the hospital. "I'm not calm." I called through the bathroom door. "I'm focused. There's a difference." When I emerged clean and dressed in clothes that fit my post-pregnancy body better than anything I'd worn in months, I felt like myself for the first time in a long while. Not David's wife, not half of a couple, but Sarah, Emily's mother, a woman capable of taking care of herself and her daughter. "The lawyer I called yesterday wants to see me Monday," I told Rachel. "Can you watch Emily?" "Of course. But Sarah, what if David comes back? What if this is all some kind of, I don't know, temporary insanity? Post-baby panic?" I looked at Emily, content in her aunt's arms, her tiny fist wrapped around Rachel's finger. "Then he comes back to find that his wife and daughter learned to be just fine without him. And he has to earn his way back into our lives, if we decide we want him there." "Do you think you'll want him back?" It was a fair question. David and I had been together for 6 years, married for 3. We'd planned this baby together, painted the nursery together, practiced breathing techniques together. There had been real love there, real partnership. But there had also been lies, secrets, betrayal at the moment when I needed him most. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I'm not going to spend Emily's childhood waiting for him to decide what he wants. We're going to build a good life, and if he wants to be part of it, he'll have to prove he deserves to be." The phone rang. The house phone this time. My heart jumped, thinking it might be David, ready to explain, to apologize, to come home. But it was my boss, calling to check on me. "How's the new mama doing?" Patricia asked. "Great," I said and meant it. Really great. "Actually, there have been some changes in my personal situation. Can we talk about adjusting my maternity leave schedule?" As I explained what I needed, 6 weeks instead of 12, so I could get back to work and start rebuilding our financial stability, I felt something I hadn't expected. Excitement. Not about David leaving, but about the chance to prove to myself that I could handle this. That I could be the mother Emily deserved. That I could build us a life worth living. That afternoon, while Emily napped and Rachel organized my freezer meals into a more manageable system, I sat down with our joint bank account information and started the process of securing our future. There was less money than I'd expected. David had been withdrawing cash regularly, amounts that made sense now that I knew he'd been maintaining a second household. But there was enough. With my salary, with careful budgeting, with the child support I'd seek through the courts, there was enough. I thought about calling my parents, who lived across the country and had been so excited about their first grandchild. I thought about calling David's parents, who deserved to know their son had abandoned his family. But those conversations could wait. Right now, it was enough to sit in my living room with my daughter and my sister and know that we were going to be okay. Emily woke up just as the sun was setting, that golden light that makes everything look possible. I picked her up and walked to the window, showing her the world she'd been born into. "See that?" I whispered, pointing to the yard where someone, probably me, would have to mow the grass soon. "That's our house, our yard, our life, and we're going to make it beautiful." She looked up at me with those serious baby eyes, and I swear she understood every word. 3 months later, I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, holding a cantaloupe and looking uncertain about its ripeness. I almost didn't recognize her. She was smaller than I'd imagined, with short blonde hair and tired eyes. Emily was in her carrier, attached to my chest, awake and curious about the bright lights and colors of the store. She'd grown so much, had started smiling real smiles, the kind that lit up her whole face and made strangers stop us to comment on how beautiful she was. Jennifer saw me first. I watched recognition dawn on her face, followed by something that looked like fear. "Sarah?" she said quietly. "Hi, Jennifer." We stood there for a moment, two women connected by the same man's lies, not sure what to say to each other. Then Jennifer's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea. I would never have. If I'd known." "I know," I said, and found that I meant it. "You were lied to, too." "Have you? Have you heard from him?" I shook my head. "Not since he left. You?" "Once, about 6 weeks ago. He called asking if I wanted to work things out. I told him what I thought of men who abandon their newborn babies." She looked at Emily, sleeping peacefully against my chest. "She's beautiful. She looks like you." "Thank you. Are you okay? I mean, financially? Emotionally?" It was a strange conversation to have with your husband's mistress in the produce section of a grocery store, but I found myself answering honestly. "We're doing really well, actually. Better than I expected. Better than I probably would have done if he'd stayed." And it was true. In the 3 months since David had left, I'd discovered reserves of strength and competence I hadn't known I possessed. I'd negotiated a flexible work schedule that let me work from home 2 days a week. I'd found a babysitter I trusted. I'd learned to change my car's oil and unclog the kitchen sink and balance Emily on my hip while cooking dinner. More than that, I'd discovered the particular joy of making decisions based solely on what was best for Emily and me. No more compromising on weekend plans because David wanted to watch sports. No more pretending to enjoy action movies I hated. No more walking on eggshells around his moods, his needs, his unpredictable schedule. "I should have known," Jennifer said, tears starting to fall. There were signs. The way he never wanted to go to public places together. The way he'd turn his phone face down when he was with me. The way he talked about you, like you were a roommate, not his wife. "He fooled both of us," I said gently, but we both figured it out eventually. Emily stirred, making those little newborn grunts that meant she was thinking about waking up. I patted her back softly and she settled again. "She's lucky," Jennifer said, watching me soothe Emily. "To have a mother like you." "We're lucky to have each other," I said. When I got home that evening, I looked around our house. Really looked. The walls were still the same color David and I had chosen together. The furniture was still arranged the way we'd liked it as a couple. But everything felt different now. Lighter. More mine. Emily was sitting in her bouncy seat, batting at the toys hanging above her, making those delighted baby sounds that never failed to make me smile. At 4 months, she was becoming a person. Not just a tiny demanding creature, but Emily with preferences and personality quirks and opinions about things like bath time. Loved it. And tummy time. Tolerated it. And being put down when she wanted to be held. Absolutely not. "What do you think, baby girl?" I asked her. "Should we repaint the living room? Maybe a nice sage green?" She gurgled and kicked her legs, which I took as enthusiastic approval. That weekend, Rachel and I loaded Emily into her stroller and went to the hardware store. I picked out paint colors, new curtains, a cheerful throw rug for the living room. Small changes that would make the space feel more like ours, less like a place David might someday return to. "You know," Rachel said as we wandered through the home improvement aisles, Emily charming every person we passed with her bright eyes and ready smile. "I was worried about you at first. Worried you'd spend months waiting for him to come back, making yourself miserable wondering what you did wrong." "I did wonder," I admitted, "for about a week. But then I realized, what if I had done something wrong? What if I'd been a terrible wife? Does that justify lying to me for months? Does that justify abandoning his newborn daughter? Does that mean I deserve to be deceived and humiliated? And the answer is no. No matter what problems we had in our marriage, and honestly, I thought we were happy. Nothing justifies handling it the way he did. We painted the living room that Saturday while Emily napped. Rachel had brought her boyfriend Marcus, and the two of them tackled the high walls while I worked on the trim. Music played softly from my phone, and for the first time in months, I felt completely relaxed. Not waiting for anyone to come home. Not wondering where David was or when he'd call. Just present in the moment, creating something beautiful with people who cared about me. When Emily woke up, Marcus offered to hold her while Rachel and I finished the last wall. "She likes you," I told him, watching Emily stare up at his face with serious concentration. "She's perfect," he said. "Rachel shows me pictures of her constantly. I hope that's not annoying." "It's not annoying at all. She should have people who love her." That evening, after Rachel and Marcus had gone home and Emily was settled for the night, I sat in my newly green living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Contentment. Not happiness exactly. There was still grief there, still anger, still uncertainty about the future. But contentment. A sense that Emily and I were exactly where we needed to be. 6 months after David left, I got a call from a lawyer in Nevada. David wanted to discuss custody arrangements and child support. He'd found work in Las Vegas, had gotten his life sorted out, and was ready to do the right thing by Emily. I listened to the lawyer's carefully neutral language and felt nothing. No surge of hope, no fresh wave of anger, no desire to punish David or welcome him back. Just a calm assessment of what would be best for Emily. "My client is prepared to discuss visitation," the lawyer continued. "He understands there are complications given the circumstances of his departure, but he wants to be part of his daughter's life." "I'll need to think about it," I said, "and I'll need to consult with my own lawyer." After I hung up, I looked at Emily, who was in her high chair experimenting with sweet potato puree. Most of it was on her face and bib, but some was actually making it into her mouth. She was 7 months old now, sitting up on her own, laughing at peekaboo games, reaching for everything she could get her hands on. "What do you think, sweetheart? Do you want to meet your daddy?" She banged her spoon on the tray and squealed with delight, which I interpreted as, "I'm too young to have an opinion about complex family dynamics, but I trust you to make the right decision." I called my lawyer that afternoon. Patricia Chen was a small woman with a sharp mind and no patience for deadbeat dads who suddenly developed consciences. "What are you thinking?" she asked after I'd filled her in on the call. "I'm thinking that Emily deserves to know her father if he's genuinely committed to being in her life. But I'm also thinking that I won't let him waltz back in and disrupt our stability unless he can prove he's changed." "What would that look like?" "Consistent child support for at least 6 months before any visitation discussions. No missed payments, no excuses. And when visitation does start, it's supervised and gradual. I need to see that he's reliable before I let him take her anywhere." Patricia made notes. "That sounds reasonable. What about him wanting to be involved in major decisions? School, medical care, that sort of thing?" I thought about it. "He gave up that right when he abandoned us. He can have opinions, but I make the final decisions until he proves he's earned equal say." It sounded harsh when I said it out loud, but it also sounded fair. David had chosen to leave when things got difficult. He'd chosen to let another woman believe his marriage was over while I was carrying his child. He'd chosen to start a new life without considering the collateral damage to the family he was leaving behind. Choices had consequences. The negotiations took months. David's lawyer pushed for immediate visitation rights. My lawyer pushed back, demanding consistent financial support first. David missed his first 2 child support payments, claiming his new job's payroll was confused about his direct deposit information. Patricia was less diplomatic in her assessment. "He's testing you, seeing if you'll cave because you feel sorry for him or because you think Emily needs her father more than she needs stability. But I didn't cave. Emily and I had built a good life together. She was walking now, her first steps taken on a sunny Tuesday morning in my kitchen while I was making coffee. I'd been the only witness to that milestone, and dozens of others. Her first word, Mama. Her first taste of ice cream. Loved it. Her first encounter with a dog. Mixed feelings. These weren't things I'd missed because David wasn't there. They were things I'd been fully present for because I wasn't constantly wondering where he was or when he'd come home. Finally, 8 months after his initial contact, David managed to make 3 consecutive child support payments. Patricia called with his lawyer's latest proposal. Supervised visitation, 2 hours every other Saturday at a neutral location. "What do you think?" she asked. I thought about Emily, now 13 months old, walking everywhere and getting into everything. She was fearless and curious, quick to laugh, and surprisingly good at charming strangers. She was also deeply attached to our routine, our small circle of family and friends, the predictable rhythms of our life together. "Okay," I said, "but I choose the location and the supervisor. And if he misses even one visit without 24-hour notice, we go back to square one." The first visit was at a children's museum, supervised by Rachel. I stayed home, cleaned the house, and tried not to think about how Emily was reacting to meeting the father she'd never known. When Rachel brought her back after 2 hours, Emily was tired and fussy, but seemed unharmed by the experience. "How is David?" I asked Rachel while Emily napped. "Nervous. He kept asking if he was holding her right, if she seemed to like him. He brought about a dozen toys, which was sweet but overwhelming for her." "And Emily?" "She was fine, curious about him but not upset when he left. She's really well adjusted, Sarah. Whatever you've been doing, it's working." The visits continued sporadically. David managed to show up about half the time, usually with elaborate explanations for why he'd missed the other half. Work emergencies, car trouble, his girlfriend being sick. Always something beyond his control. Never a simple admission that he'd chosen something else over time with his daughter. Emily didn't seem to mind. At her age, consistency was more important than any particular relationship. And her consistency came from me, from Rachel, from the babysitter who'd watched her since she was 6 months old. David was just another adult who occasionally appeared with toys and attention, no more or less significant than any other friendly stranger. It was around Emily's 2nd birthday that I realized something had shifted in how I thought about David's abandonment. I was planning her party. A small gathering in our backyard with cake and balloons and all the people who'd been part of her life since birth. When it occurred to me that I wasn't angry anymore, not grateful, certainly, not forgiving in the sense of pretending his choices hadn't caused real damage, but not angry either. The sharp edge of betrayal had worn smooth with time and distance, leaving behind something more like sad acceptance. David had missed everything. Emily's first steps, first words, first birthday. Her obsession with books, her fear of vacuum cleaners, the way she danced to any music. Even the terrible hold music when I was on the phone with insurance companies. He'd missed the way she'd learned to comfort herself by rubbing the satin edge of her favorite blanket. Missed her first successful use of a spoon. Missed the morning she'd woken up calling, "Mama," with such excitement that I'd rushed to her crib thinking something was wrong, only to find her standing there grinning, proud of her new skill. He'd chosen to miss it all for a woman in Nevada who, according to the social media posts Rachel occasionally showed me, seemed to require a lot of attention and drama. Jennifer had been replaced within months of David's arrival in Las Vegas. The new girlfriend posted photos of elaborate date nights and expensive gifts, of David looking uncomfortable in restaurants that were clearly out of his budget range. It would have been easy to feel smug about his obvious unhappiness, but mostly I just felt sorry for him. He'd traded a family who loved him for a series of women who seemed to see him as a source of entertainment and financial security. He'd traded the quiet satisfaction of building something lasting for the constant anxiety of trying to prove himself to people who would never really know him. Emily's party was perfect. She wore a yellow dress covered in tiny daisies, her hair finally long enough for the little bow clips Rachel had been buying since she was born. She was fascinated by the candles on her cake, clapping and squealing when we sang happy birthday, then looking utterly betrayed when I helped her blow them out. David wasn't there. He'd been invited through his lawyer, but had declined. Something about not wanting to complicate Emily's special day. I wondered if he'd seen the photos Rachel posted later. Emily covered in chocolate cake, surrounded by people who adored her, beaming with the particular joy of a 2-year-old who just had the best day of her life. That night, after all the guests had gone home and Emily was asleep, exhausted by excitement, I sat in our living room looking at the detritus of the party. Wrapping paper and ribbon, a few forgotten toys, the beautiful children's books Emily had received from various aunts and uncles and family friends. I thought about the story I'd tell Emily someday about her father. Not the sanitized version where everyone was blameless and everything worked out for the best, but not the bitter version either where David was a villain and she was better off without him. Something honest but age-appropriate. Something that would help her understand that people make choices, that those choices have consequences, but that she was loved and wanted and precious regardless of what her father had chosen. The doorbell rang. It was almost 10 o'clock, late for unexpected visitors. Through the peephole, I saw a man I barely recognized. David, but thinner, older looking, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit right. He was holding a wrapped gift and shifting nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. Sarah. His voice was hoarse, uncertain. I know it's late. I know I should have called first. I wanted to bring Emily a birthday present. She's asleep. I know. Could I just leave it with you? I studied his face through the gap in the door. He looked like a man who'd been running from something for 2 years and had finally stopped, only to discover he'd run so far he couldn't find his way back. Why didn't you come to the party? I asked. I thought it would be easier for everyone if I wasn't there. Less confusing for Emily, less awkward for you. You thought wrong. He flinched at the directness of that. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? I looked at the gift in his hands wrapped in paper covered with cartoon princesses, clearly chosen by someone who didn't know Emily well enough to know she was currently obsessed with trucks and dinosaurs. 5 minutes, I said, and closed the door to undo the chain. When I opened it again, David stepped inside hesitantly, looking around our house like he was visiting a museum of his former life. Everything was different from when he'd left. New paint, new furniture, photos of Emily's milestones covering the walls. The only trace of our marriage was Emily herself, asleep upstairs. The house looks great, he said awkwardly. Really? Really nice. Thank you. And Emily, God, Sarah, she's beautiful. She looks so much like you. She looks like both of us. We stood in my living room, two people who'd once shared everything and now had less in common than I did with the checkout clerk at the grocery store. The silence stretched until David cleared his throat. I know I have no right to ask, he said. But how is she? Really? Is she happy? Does she ask about me? It would have been easy to lie, to punish him with stories of Emily crying for her daddy, of asking why he'd left us. But the truth was both kinder and more damning than any lie I could have told. She's wonderful, I said. She's smart and funny and kind. She loves books and music and playing outside. She has friends at daycare and she adores her Aunt Rachel. She's never asked about you because she doesn't know there's anything to ask about. David's face crumpled. She doesn't know I exist. She knows she has a father. She's met you. But David, she's 2 years old. Her world is made up of the people who are consistently present in her life. You haven't been. I know I fucked up. I was so scared when you got pregnant. Scared I'd be a bad father. Scared I wasn't ready. Scared I'd mess everything up. So you left. So I left. He sat down heavily on my couch, the gift still in his hands. And I did mess everything up, just not in the way I was afraid of. I remained standing, arms crossed. What do you want, David? I want to know my daughter. I want to be part of her life, if you'll let me. I know I don't deserve it. I know I have to earn it, but Sarah... She's my daughter, too. She's been your daughter for 2 years. Where have you been? Making mistakes. Trying to run away from responsibility. Being exactly the kind of man I was afraid I'd be. There was something different about him tonight. Not just the weight loss or the ill-fitting clothes, but something in his eyes. The cocky confidence he'd always carried was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. Are you still with the girlfriend? The one who posts pictures of your expensive dinner dates? He looked surprised that I knew about her, then embarrassed. No, we broke up 3 months ago. Turns out she was more interested in what I could buy her than in who I actually was. And Jennifer? Jennifer was a good person who deserved better than what I gave her. She deserves better than a man who lies to her about being separated from his wife. I sat down across from him, studying his face. What's changed, David? What's different now? I lost my job, he said simply. The construction company I was working for went under, and when I tried to find something else, I realized I was completely alone. No friends, no family, no one who cared whether I found work or not. I'd burned every bridge, lied to everyone who'd tried to help me. So now you want to come back because you're lonely and broke? No. He shook his head emphatically. I want to come back because I finally understand what I threw away. Not just you, though I did throw away the best woman I've ever known. But Emily. Sarah, I threw away the chance to watch my daughter grow up. I threw away the chance to be her hero, to teach her things, to be someone she could count on. She already has people she can count on. I know, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. I'm grateful you've given her a good life, that she's surrounded by people who love her. But I'm also hoping there might be room for one more person who loves her. Even if that person is an idiot who took 2 years to figure out what really matters. Emily's cry came through the baby monitor, the escalating wail that meant she'd woken up disoriented and needed comfort. Without thinking, I started toward the stairs. Can I... David stood up. Can I see her? Just for a second? I hesitated, then nodded. But if she gets upset, you leave immediately. Emily's room was dark except for the soft glow of her nightlight. She was standing in her crib, tears on her cheeks, holding her favorite stuffed dinosaur. When she saw me, she reached up with both arms. Mama, she sobbed. Bad dream. I lifted her out of the crib and held her close, rubbing her back until her breathing slowed. Over her head, I could see David in the doorway, watching us with an expression of such longing it was almost painful to witness. Emily noticed him too. She didn't cry or hide, just looked at him with the calm curiosity she showed all adults. Who dat? She asked me, pointing at David. I looked at David, then back at Emily. That's David. He brought you a birthday present. Present? Emily perked up immediately. At 2, the promise of gifts could overcome almost any trauma. David stepped into the room, moving slowly so as not to startle her. Hi, Emily. Happy birthday. She studied his face seriously. You have sad eyes, she announced. David laughed, a sound caught between humor and tears. Yeah, I do. I am sad. But seeing you makes me happy. Why you sad? From the mouths of babes. I watched David struggle with how to answer a question that cut straight to the heart of everything he'd done wrong. Because I missed your birthday party, he said finally. And I missed watching you learn to walk. And I missed hearing you say your first words. I missed a lot of important things, and that makes me very sad. Emily considered this. Mama says sometimes people make mistakes. Big mistakes. That's right. I made a very big mistake. But Mama says we can say sorry and try to do better. David's eyes filled with tears. Your mama is very smart. Would it be okay if I said sorry to you? Emily nodded solemnly. David knelt down so they were at eye level. Emily, I'm sorry I wasn't here for your birthday. I'm sorry I missed so many important days. I promise I'm going to try to do better if your mama says it's okay." Emily looked at me. "It's okay, Mama?" The weight of that question settled on my shoulders. It wasn't really about David anymore, or about our failed marriage, or about the anger and hurt I'd carried for 2 years. It was about Emily, and what would serve her best, and what kind of woman I wanted to be when she looked back on this moment someday. "We'll see," I told her. People have to prove they mean it when they say they want to do better. How they prove it? By showing up, by being reliable, by putting the people they love first, even when it's hard. I was talking to Emily, but I was looking at David, making sure he understood the terms. He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "I have a lot to prove." Emily yawned, the combination of birthday excitement and late-night visitors finally catching up with her. "Can I have my present now?" David handed her the wrapped gift. She tore into it with the enthusiasm of a 2-year-old, revealing a baby doll with its own diaper bag and bottle. "She's beautiful," Emily said, hugging the doll. "What's her name?" "I don't know," David said. "What do you want to name her?" Emily thought seriously. "Sarah, like Mama." My heart clenched. David's did too, judging by his expression. "That's a perfect name," he said softly. After Emily was settled back in her crib with her new doll, David and I returned to the living room. The easy part was over. Now came the hard conversation about what happened next. "I meant what I said upstairs," I told him. "You have to prove you're serious about this. Emily doesn't need another adult in her life who's going to disappear when things get complicated." "I know. What would you need to see from me?" "Consistency. Show up for scheduled visits. Pay your child support on time, every time. Get your life stable, job, housing, whatever you need to do. And David, no more lies. Not to me, not to Emily, not to yourself." "What about us?" he asked quietly. "Is there any chance we could—" "No." The word came out more firmly than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. "There's no chance of that. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken." He nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I thought about it honestly. I've already forgiven you, in the sense that I'm not angry anymore. I don't wish you harm. I don't want you to suffer. But forgiving someone doesn't mean you trust them again. It doesn't mean you pretend their choices didn't have consequences. The consequence being that I lost my family. The consequence being that you chose to leave your family. I didn't take Emily away from you, David. You left. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of that truth settling between us. "I'll do better," he said finally. "I swear to you, I'll do better." "Don't swear to me," I said. "Swear to her." After David left, I walked through my house, turning off lights, checking locks, following the routine that had become second nature over the past 2 years. In Emily's room, I adjusted her blanket and kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. "What do you think, baby girl?" I whispered. "Should we give Daddy a chance?" She stirred but didn't wake, one small hand clutching her new doll. I didn't know what the future would hold. Maybe David would prove himself, would become the father Emily deserved, would earn a place in our lives through consistency and love. Maybe he would disappoint us again, would find reasons to drift away when the novelty wore off and the real work of parenting began. But I knew this. Emily and I would be fine either way. We'd built something strong together, something that didn't depend on David's choices or presence or approval. We had our own life, our own rhythms, our own joy. And if David wanted to be part of that life, he would have to earn his way in. Not as the husband who'd abandoned us, not as the father who'd missed 2 years of his daughter's life, but as someone new. Someone who'd learned from his mistakes and was willing to do the hard work of building trust from scratch. The phone rang as I was getting ready for bed. I thought it might be David, calling to say something he'd forgotten, or to ask another question about Emily's schedule. But it was Rachel. "How did it go?" she asked. Emily texted me that David came over. Emily couldn't text, obviously, but Rachel had taught her to press the camera button on my phone and send random pictures, which we called Emily texts. It went, "Okay. He seems different. More serious about wanting to be in Emily's life. Do you believe him?" I want to believe him, for Emily's sake. But I'm not going to hold my breath. Good. You've done an amazing job with her, Sarah. Whatever happens with David doesn't change that. After we hung up, I stood at my bedroom window looking out at our neighborhood. Porch lights glowing, other families settling in for the night behind lit windows. This was our world, safe, predictable, full of people who cared about us. David had given up his place in this world when he chose to leave. If he wanted back in, he'd have to prove he understood what he'd lost and what he was asking to regain. He'd have to prove he was worthy of Emily's trust, Emily's love, Emily's time and attention. Most importantly, he'd have to prove he was someone Emily could count on. Because she deserved that. She deserved adults in her life who chose her, consistently and without reservation, every single day. I'd been choosing her every day for 2 years. It was the best decision I'd ever made. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt that familiar sense of contentment settling over me. Tomorrow, Emily would wake up chattering about her new doll, demanding pancakes for breakfast, wanting to read the same 3 books we read every morning. It would be a normal, beautiful, ordinary day in the life we'd built together. And that was enough. That was everything. The story could end there, with David trying to rebuild his relationship with Emily, with me cautiously allowing supervised visits, with all of us learning to navigate this new configuration of family. It could end with hope for the future, uncertainty about David's commitment, but certainty about Emily's resilience and my own strength. But that's not where it ended. 3 years later, Emily is 5 years old and about to start kindergarten. David has been consistently present in her life for those 3 years, showing up for scheduled visits, paying child support without fail, slowly earning back the trust he'd thrown away. He's different now, more mature, more reliable, more aware of how his choices affect other people. Emily adores him. Not in the desperate way of a child trying to win love from an absent parent, but in the secure way of a child who knows she's cherished. He reads to her, takes her to the park, helps her build elaborate block cities that cover my living room floor. Last month, he asked if he could take her overnight for the first time. I said yes, not because I'd forgiven him for leaving us, but because Emily trusted him and I trusted Emily's instincts. I spent that night alone in my house, walking through rooms that felt too quiet without Emily's chatter and laughter. It wasn't loneliness exactly. I'd grown comfortable with solitude, had learned to find joy in my own company. But it was strange, knowing Emily was somewhere else, building memories that wouldn't include me. When David brought her home the next morning, she was full of stories about the pancakes he'd made, shaped like dinosaurs, and the movie they'd watched, with princesses and dragons. She hugged me fiercely and said, "I missed you, Mama, but Daddy took good care of me." And I knew in that moment that David had truly changed. The man who'd left us when Emily was 3 days old would never have been able to care for a 5-year-old overnight. He would have panicked at the first sign of tears, would have called me to come rescue him from the responsibility he'd voluntarily taken on. But this David, the one who'd lost everything and slowly, painfully built himself into someone worthy of his daughter's trust. This David had given Emily a night full of joy and security and love. I'm not grateful for what David put us through. I wouldn't choose that pain for any woman, any child. But I am grateful for who Emily and I became because of it. We learned that we could take care of ourselves, that we could build a life full of love and laughter and meaning without depending on someone else's choices to make us whole. Emily will grow up knowing that she was chosen every day by the adults in her life. She'll know that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect people, but about showing up consistently and putting the people you love first. She'll know that families come in all configurations, that what matters isn't who's present at the beginning, but who chooses to stay when things get difficult. Most of all, she'll know that she's worthy of that kind of love. because she's been receiving it every day of her life. From me, from Rachel, from David in his imperfect but committed way, from all the people who've chosen to be part of our story. The day I came home from the hospital with Emily, I thought my world was ending. David was gone, I was alone with a newborn, and everything I'd planned for our future had crumbled. I was wrong. My world wasn't ending. It was beginning. And it turned out to be more beautiful than anything I could have imagined.